Hello, and welcome to the LA Venture Podcast. This is Minnie Ingersoll, host of the podcast and partner at 10110. 10110 is a seed stage fund here in LA. All opinions expressed on this show by me and my guests are solely our own. Nicole Quinn is a partner at Lightspeed, one of the iconic funds of Silicon Valley. Nicole focuses on early stage consumer internet and fintech with an amazing portfolio, including Calm, Goop, Lady Gaga's House, Rothy, Zola, Girl Boss, and so many more. Before that, Nicole spent nearly a decade at Morgan Stanley covering e-commerce, retail, and consumer companies. Nicole, thrilled to have you on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Minnie.
Great. Well, maybe we start with the basics of Lightspeed. I know earlier this year there was a $4.2 billion announcement, but tell me a little bit more about like sweet spot of company, size check, that sort of thing.
Sure. So at Lightspeed, we actually started in January of the year 2000. And I think that shapes who we are as a firm because we're all about sticking with founders through the good times as well as the very tough times. So we have 10 billion assets under management. Our last fund was a $4 billion fund. And the idea there is that of our growth capital, 70% of it actually goes into companies we've already funded. So we'll start to invest in companies at the seed, Series A, Series B stage, and then we'll continue to be that capital partner for their life. And so our average check size on the early stage is about 15 million. On the growth stage, it's about 30 million. But we're excited to work with founders of all different stages and sectors.
Great. And will you do pre-seed or will you do companies that don't have revenue yet?
I would say like 95+% of our investments are post-revenue. Our investments in seeds typically range between 1 and 3 million. 3 is usually the cap for our seed investments. But I would say that valuations have certainly been creeping up, and they probably used to be 10 million posts for seeds, and now they're sort of 15, 20 million. So we really see lots of different valuations.
Great. And there's probably 100 people or so at Lightspeed. How do people, or you can correct me if I'm wrong, but how does someone know who to approach? If I'm an entrepreneur wanting to approach Lightspeed, how do I know who to go to?
Yeah, of course. So we have you are right, that we have about 100 people, or 80 at Lightspeed. We have 20 investment professionals, and then the rest really are on the operating side, which I think is something really special about Lightspeed, to have teams who help with business development, PR marketing, growth hacking, hiring. We have 2 different hiring teams. So most of the people are on that side of things. But on your question with regards to which investment partner to go to, I would say go to lsvp.com. Our website, and you can find all of us. You can filter it by the different geographies that we're in. We actually have 9 offices globally, and you can really read our bios and see the areas that we invest in, and find who is the best person for you and what you're building.
Great. I just send everything to Alex Tausig and he just forwards it around for me. So, or you can do that. Anyways, maybe this is not a fair question, but do you compare yourself? Who's an equivalent? Is it Andreessen similar to a Lightspeed? Is that a fair question?
Oh, that's so interesting. I think people compare different VCs. And it's interesting. I spent 10 years in equity research, and I guess there's Bill Gurley at Benchmark who did that, and Christian Green at Forerunner who did that. So I sometimes look at individual people. But yeah, there's sort of top 10 VCs. But you know what? There's a great quote by Bezos where it says, yes, you should look at the competitors, but really you should be focused and obsessed with the consumer. And so that's exactly how we are at Lightspeed. Yes, there are others who are, top 5 VCs, but being focused on the consumer and the startups, and that's exactly where we want to help. That's where we spend our attention.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Do you think being an equity researcher, I guess what are multiples right now in the public markets for the sorts of companies that you're investing in? And do you think about that when you're making an investment? How are the public markets doing?
Later stages, certainly. I think that when the market started to crash in March, April this year, that probably was reflected in some growth stage valuations. And then quickly, as the public markets turned up again, the same is true. And so for me, I think about the fact that we did the Facebook Pandora group on IPOs when I was at Morgan Stanley, and we'd meet those companies 2 years before they IPO'd, and we work with them on their story and making sure that they really were in the best possible position to IPO. And so I think about the growth stage companies in a similar way. And yes, we certainly do look at the public valuations, because I think private, there was a period where the two were very out of step with one another, and now they're definitely coming back. And in fact, I would say public market valuations have really rallied, and private have not done in the same way over the last few months, which is in complete contrast to what we saw over the last few years.
So I don't do consumer investing. And so what are sort of your growth stage multiples now in the public and the private areas?
I was looking just the other day at some of the internet stocks public multiples, and the range is huge. So if you look at like an EV to sales multiple, the range is from like 10 to 50 times. And, companies like Snapchat, where we invested at the seed round, 40 times. So they have certainly really rallied, especially over the past few months. And then on the private side, it really depends on the sector. I would say on the e-commerce side of things, we see everything from, like 1 to 10x, with the average being about 4x forward times revenues. Marketplaces, more towards 10x. But then fintech and SaaS companies can be above that.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So let's talk about your investments, because that's kind of the core of this. So I named a few of you have a much wider portfolio. You have great companies in there. Of the ones that have really successful, were any kind of controversial? Did you have to bang the table and fight over any of them?
It's such an interesting question, because I feel like a lot of people do feel like you got to bang the table. That's not how we invest at Lightspeed. Like I would say at Lightspeed, we have the benefit of having some really smart, sharp, experienced minds around the table. And so when I come to the whole group with an investment recommendation, I am looking for feedback. And so I do think that some of the most controversial ones are ones where people do not vote as highly. And so I think Cameo, for example, we had a couple of lower votes, but that gave me more conviction, because I think the very best companies are often like the best products, where you don't get a load of 5 and 6s out of 10s. You get some 1s and you get some 10s. And the same is true with other VCs. Other VCs said to me, "Oh, I can't believe you invested in Cameo. I'm not excited about that company." And then by the next round, they saw the numbers and they were like, "Oh, now I'm very excited about this company. Can I invest?"
Yeah, interesting. So will the side of the Lightspeed team that does B2B investing, will they vote on a consumer company as well? Do you all vote on all of them?
Yeah, exactly. We do. It's something we've done for 20 years, and something we will continue to do. I think that it's important to have, a core group of people who are enterprise, infrastructure, healthcare, consumer, all seeing different things in those investments and bringing different perspectives to the table. So yeah, we all vote.
Interesting. And does that change for the growth stage companies versus the seed stage company? Like, can you do $1 million check without everyone having to vote on it?
So we have a slightly different process for seed stage, which is that we have a 2-partner process. So 2 partners need to meet that company and approve it. We still do the investment memo, but then from Series A onwards, all founders come in to present at Lightspeed. We all see it, hear it, discuss it afterwards, and then vote on the company with our excitement level.
Are there any good, so the investment memos, was it Bessemer who released all their investment memos? I think it was Bessemer.
Yeah, you're right.
Are there any good ones from you guys where if you put out your investment memo in Calm, it would look totally different, or Rothy's, or someone that you're like, "Oh yeah, that was a very different one going in than it looked like coming out"?
That is such an interesting question. I love to actually look at past memos, and sometimes, I send them to our founders, and they say to me, "Gosh, God, this makes me so excited about my own company, seeing how you see it through your eyes."
Yeah.
But I would say, if you think about it, like Rothy's, Calm, Cameo, Goop, they actually all are very similar to how they were, 3, 4, 5 years ago. They haven't been through like major pivots in the business. So they are actually all true today to what we wrote in the investment memo. So
those are all very iconic brands. And you tweeted 5 things to look for in an iconic brand, something like that, in an enduring brand?
Yeah, so I tweeted that because I think that people often think that a brand relates to e-commerce. And I would say a brand does relate to e-commerce, but it relates to so many other sectors. So if you're a fintech business and you're building an insurance company of today for millennials and you're competing against the Geicos of the world, you want to build a brand. Like Geico is a great brand. They have very catchy marketing and it is a true household brand name. And so that's why I asked the question, what makes you a true brand, whether you're a marketplace, a fintech company, media business? You really have to think about, like, am I a brand? And some of those questions help. So it's things like, it's consumer, I said the NPS score, which is often debated about. I do think that customer satisfaction of your product is super important. And then a referral rate, that really depends on the business, but we do want to see that people are referring others. We get excited when there's often, 10, 20, 30% of the business of new customers coming from referral. The organic percentage is another one where we often see businesses have over 50% of the business come from organic of some kind, whether that be word of mouth or whether that be referral or PR marketing. And I mean, with Cameo, it's about 99% organic. And with e-commerce companies, we get excited where it's over 50% or maybe over 30% after a Series B. So those are some of the numbers that I would share. Yeah.
Wow. So 50% for an e-commerce brand you might be seeing at the early stages.
Yeah, you really do. People, when they love a product, they really talk about it.
What are you looking for on other metrics, like a good early stage month over month growth? I mean, I know that it varies, but what might stand out?
Month over month is so hard because it's, we got to think, hey, has the company been around for 3 months? Has it been around for 3 years?
I've been to YC.
Exactly. So I would say, like, if you look at like the yearly numbers at a seed stage company, we want to see between 3 and 5x year over year growth. At the Series A, 3x. By a Series B, 2 to 3x. I mean, some of these, the best businesses, even at Series C and D rounds, are still growing over 100% a year. And so those are primarily the numbers that we look for.
So I'm looking at a company right now that's like SaaS for retailers. What is going to happen with retailers? And should I just assume retail is going to be down because everyone is moving online? Or how do you think about the future of retail? Should I still be investing there?
If you think about SaaS for retail, historically, retailers have been some of the hardest big corporations to sell into. Now, I wonder whether that is changing because of COVID. On the negative, you could say that retailers, especially brick and mortar retailers, are really struggling, so they won't have the same amount to spend on some of those tools. But on the other hand, and this is the side I believe, I think the retailers are now seeing a seismic shift in their e-commerce penetration, and some who maybe were left behind and not as invested in e-commerce are realizing, gosh, we have to really quickly move here, and we have to start using a lot of tools to do so. And hey, I don't need to have a huge engineering team. I can use all these incredible products like Shopify and RevCat to be able to do this. I think the rise of no code is really only just begun.
What are other places where you're really pushing a lot of brands? Like, how about subscriptions? When does it make sense to move from, I'm buying one of these products to I'm buying a subscription in something?
So subscription really depends on the product. So for Calm, for example, subscription makes so much sense because if you look at like the engagement of these people, it's incredible. We added sleep stories and instantly tripled the engagement and retention of the business.
Whoa. Say that again. You had, interesting.
So if you think about it, people were coming in and they were spending 10 minutes a day meditating, but they were subscribers. And so they were already paying the money and they were very happy when Calm added on all this extra content for them. They felt like they were getting so much more value from the app. It's really become a super app where you can listen to music, you can meditate, you can do yoga. And my favorite, you can listen to sleep stories. And so instead of just doing 10 minutes of meditation a day, then people were coming in and doing 20, 30-minute sleep stories. And also the additional cost to the company is so low that you might as well offer a subscription. That's when I think subscription really does make sense, which we see in companies like Peloton's case.
Yeah, great. Does everyone at Lightspeed have theses that you're working on? And do you in particular have do you write them all out and, let the world know what your theses are right now?
So some VCs are very focused on theses, and some are just purely focused on when they see an inflection point and moving after that. I would say we try to bridge the two. And so we do have broad theses, and yes, we do write them out. I probably have, a few different theses at any one time. But the most important thing is that we have two ears and one mouth, and we should be using them in that proportion. And so I always want to be listening to what the customer's telling me. When we hear a founder come to us with a really interesting insight around why the world is changing and why it's going to look differently in the future and why now is the time to do this because maybe regulation's changing or, the world's looking different because of COVID or another reason, then that's when we've got to move quickly. So I tend to be more on that side of things.
Do you have a good thesis right now that you've, written out?
So one of the areas I'm most excited about is a lot of different sectors moving to be virtual. So in the past, you and I probably would have done this podcast in person.
Yep.
But, we've all seen the rise of Zoom. And so it's thinking about what other areas does that apply to? For me, that applies to live virtual shopping. That's an area I'm excited about. There's also live virtual conferences and even live virtual networking. So I just invested in a company called Lunch Club. The website is lunchclub.ai. And this business started off by matching people through a really smart algorithm where people could meet one another in person. But if you're meeting someone in person, don't you find there's some difficulties with picking a coffee shop in between you, parking? So they switched to be virtual only, removed all of that friction, and we can just jump on a phone call or jump on a Zoom and speak to one another. And they match people based on status and experience levels and interests. They really pay with some fascinating people. I've met friends through this company, and it's a really exciting one.
Interesting. I have done it. I did it a while ago when it was still in person.
You did an in-person lunch club. I love it.
Yeah,
Cool.
But it was a little while ago when I lived in San Francisco.
You should try it again now in LA.
Okay. Okay, great. I'm going to check out Lunch Club again. Live shopping is interesting. So am I shopping with friends or something, you think?
Gosh, there's so many different ways of doing it, and there's so many different companies who are trying different approaches. And so, yes, you could shop with friends. Yes, you could do Twitch for shopping. Yes, you can do a version where you're going in to see the retailer, but virtually. So you're literally looking around the store. So there's lots of different versions of it, but there's some super exciting companies emerging. And I feel like this is just the beginning. People have been looking at live and virtual shopping in China for a long time. I think it'll look different in the US. It will not look the same as in China, but it's a really interesting opportunity.
Interesting. And so millennials right now are 20s and 30s broadly, I think. And Gen Z are kind of teens now. Will you be looking at what are the Gen Zs in China doing, or how do you try to see the future?
This is one of the great benefits of having 9 offices globally. You can call up our amazing China investor, James Ma, and say to him, hey, I know you invested in Pinduoduo. Tell us what some of the interesting trends are that are emerging in China.
Will Lightspeed lead a Series B, let's say, if Sequoia did the A?
So for Lightspeed, I say 2 things. I say, A, you can't be called Lightspeed and move slowly. So we always promise you that we will move quickly and not take up too much time because you've got to be building your business. And secondly, it doesn't matter who else is investing. So it doesn't matter who else is investing in this round, in a prior round. We will do our own analysis and we'll build our own conviction around that founder. And then we will invest in you. And that's it. Like, we want to be your biggest believer, your biggest fan, and be on that board with you and helping you on this journey for the next 10 plus years. And so, yeah, we've invested in companies in the next round after Sequoia. We've also invested in companies at the Series A, and they've invested at the Series B and C rounds. So it goes both ways.
How fast will you guys invest? I'm sure you track your metrics and say, from first meeting to term sheet, that's, on average, like, how fast are you moving?
It's definitely moving a lot faster now. That I can definitely tell you. I would say, like, in the last few years, the time has probably doubled from first meeting to term sheet, or halved rather. It's just got a lot faster. Yeah. And so if it's a seed company, we can meet a company one day, the next partner meet them the next day, and then we can present our investment recommendation to the partnership on the Monday and give them a term sheet that same day. So it can often be like 2 or 3 days, and we definitely work over the weekend. For Series A, it's a little bit longer, but honestly, you're still talking days. It's no longer weeks or longer than that.
Yeah. Whew. All right. Okay, I have to ask you just like a couple more random questions. I know we're tight on time. How about celebrities? You have all these amazing celebrities in your portfolio. If I'm a startup and I'm working on, something in the mental health space, like, do you have recommendation? Like, how can I connect with a celebrity, or how should I think about it?
I have a definite recommendation. You can use Cameo. I actually think if you're an individual or a company, Cameo is the most incredible way to get in front of a celebrity, because people think about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have to clarify what Cameo is, because I think of it as Snoop Dogg giving me like happy birthday wishes.
So Cameo started off as a way for you to order a video shout out, often a birthday message from a celebrity or influencer. Now we have 20,000 influencers, and you can do Zoom calls with them synchronously. You can send direct messages to them, as well as getting these video shout outs, which is still absolutely the core part of the business. And so if I was building a tennis app, I would make sure that I would go onto Cameo and message my favorite tennis people and see whether they wanted to be involved in the company. It's just such a great way of getting in touch with these people at a pretty low cost, especially the direct messages.
That's brilliant. And I don't know why I didn't know that. I'm not sure if that's totally widely known or just not known by me, which is also possible.
No, you are absolutely right. It is not widely known to get in contact with them that way, but it is definitely starting to, given the growth.
Totally brilliant. If you could be a movie star or a VC, which would you be?
I would be a VC. If I couldn't be a VC, I would be a journalist. I've always thought being an anchorwoman or being out doing all the international work would be really interesting. But I love being a VC. I wouldn't change it for the world.
You can start a podcast and it kind of scratches the itch. You get to choose you go do international, podcast reporting.
That's so true. I love it.
Yeah, it's so fun. You have a ton of followers. Who do you follow? Who do you respect in the industry?
I love that question. I often ask companies which companies they respect in the industry. Listen, I mentioned a couple of those names before, but I really respect Bill Gurley and Christian Green. I think that both of them have really thoughtful tweets, and I think you learn a lot from them. I would encourage you guys to also follow Alex Tausig, my partner who we also mentioned. I think Alex and also Jeremy Liu just have really interesting insights, so follow them on Twitter.
Great. I do, in fact. You have had all this great success. Would you say that do you consider yourself like a self-confident person?
Wow, Minnie, you're asking me questions that nobody else has ever asked me. I love it. I actually consider myself to be a lucky person. And so maybe there's some self-confidence that goes into that, but I think I'm a believer that the harder you work, the luckier you get. So I don't think I've got anything by chance in this life. I think that I've just worked really, really hard and really wanted something. I believe if you put something out into the world and you work hard towards it, then it dramatically increases your chance of getting it. Yeah,
I completely agree. And you were an athlete, weren't you?
Yeah, 100-meter sprinter.
I mean, you got to work hard at that, right? It's a similar, yeah.
You have to train so hard, and then the ultimate decision comes down to 12 seconds. So it's much like VC. You spend years doing it, and then it comes down to a very short period that matters.
Wow, I love that. Anything else I missed and should be asking you today?
No, this has been awesome. Love the conversation. Your energy is amazing.
Oh, fantastic. No, it's been great to have you. It's been a delight. Keep funding great companies and especially great LA companies.
Thank you so much, Minnie. I have to say that over half my portfolio is in LA, so I will not stop. I'm excited about it.